The crystal spires of Ardania had never looked more beautiful than they did in their final hour. Princess Celeste stood at the grand window of her tower chamber, watching the prismatic light dance across the floating gardens that had taken her ancestors millennia to cultivate. The sight should have filled her with peace, but instead, a cold dread settled in her stomach like a stone. Below in the courtyard, she could see the emergency council meeting she had been deliberately excluded from. Lord Cassius Blackthorns. Silver hair caught the light as he gestured emphatically to the other advisors. High Priestess Morvana nodded gravely, her ceremonial robes billowing in the ethereal breeze. Even her childhood friend, Captain Aldrich, of the Royal Guard, stood among them, with his head bowed in what looked suspiciously like shame. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. "Enter," she called, not turning from the window. "Your Highness?" The voice was unfamiliar human. She spun around to find a tall man in the distinctive blue and silver uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. His brown hair was cropped military short, and his green eyes held an intensity that immediately commanded respect. "Captain Marcus Stone, Earth Alliance. I was told you were expecting me." Celeste frowned. "I'm afraid there's been some mistake, Captain. I know nothing of any Earth delegation." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's concerning. My orders were explicit. Provide military support to Princess Celeste of Verdania in preparation for the Voidwalker invasion. Your council specifically requested human assistance." "My council?" The dread in her stomach grew heavier. "Captain Stone, I think we both need to understand what's truly happening here." Before Marcus could respond, the palace bells began to toll not the melodic chimes of ceremony, but the harsh, discordant clanging of invasion. Through the crystal walls, Celeste could see dark shapes materializing at the city's borders there, forms writhing like living shadows against Verdania's luminous architecture. "The Voidwalkers," she whispered, her face draining of color. "They're here." But the defenses, should be her words, died as she witnessed the unthinkable. The great barrier that protected Verdania flickered once, twice, then vanished entirely. In the courtyard below, Lord Cassius raised his hand in what could only be a signal. The massive gates of the palace began to swing open. "By the stars," Celeste breathed. "They're letting them in." Marcus was already moving, his hand on the weapon at his side. "Your Highness, we need to leave." "Now." But Celeste remained frozen. At the window, watching her world crumble as the Voidwalkers poured through the open gates. Her people, the advisors she had trusted with her life. The guards who had sworn to protect her stood aside as the shadows consumed everything in their path. "Why?" she whispered. The chamber door burst open. Captain Aldrich rushed in, his face a mask of anguish. "Celeste, you have to run. The council, they've made a deal with the Voidwalkers. Your life is forfeit in exchange for sparing the outer provinces." Marcus stepped protectively in front of the princess. "And you? Are you part of this betrayal too?" Aldrich's hand went to his sword, but not to draw it. Instead, he unfastened the blade and let it clatter to the floor. "I should be. I stood there and said nothing while they planned your murder, Celeste. I'm a coward, but I won't be your executioner." Sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor. Celeste finally moved, her royal training overriding her shock. She grabbed a small crystal pendant from her jewelry box, the heart of Verdania, her kingdom's most sacred relic, and faced the two men. "Captain Stone, your mission may have been arranged through treachery, but will you honor it still?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I gave my word to protect you, Your Highness. That doesn't change because your own people decided to break theirs." Together, they ran. The Last Stand of Verdanistry Outline, Part 1. The Betrayal of Trust Characters. Princess Celeste of Verdania. Captain Marcus Stone, human soldier. Celeste discovers her own council has made a secret deal with the invaders. Marcus arrives as part of Earth's diplomatic mission, witnesses the betrayal. The palace falls as Celeste's trusted advisors open the gates to enemy forces. Celeste and Marcus barely escape the initial assault. Together, Part 2. Unlikely alliance characters. Celeste Marcus, General Theron Voss, enemy commander. Celeste struggles with the reality that her people abandoned her Marcus proves his loyalty by refusing orders to abandon the mission. They discover the enemy seeks an ancient artifact that could destroy both worlds. General Voss reveals the true scope of the invasion plans. Part 3. The hunt for truth. Characters: Celeste, Marcus. Oracle: Seraphina, ancient keeper of secrets. The duo seeks the oracle in the forbidden ruins beneath the city. Seraphina reveals the artifact's true purpose and Celeste's hidden heritage. They learn that only a bond between human and Verdanian can stop the weapon the oracle's sacrifice allows them to escape as the ruins collapse. Part 4. The price of power. Characters: Celeste, Marcus, Lord Cassius Blackthorn, traitorous advisor. Confrontation with Cassius, who orchestrated the betrayal for personal power. Marcus is severely wounded protecting Celeste from Cassius's forces. Celeste must choose between saving Marcus or pursuing the artifact. Her choice to save Marcus awakens her true powers and their mystical bond. Part 5. Redemption's light. Characters: Celeste, Marcus, Commander Nyx, Shadowbane, final enemy. The final battle in the heart of Verdania's crystal core. Celeste and Marcus's combined strength creates an unprecedented fusion of energies. Commander Nyx's defeat purges the shadow corruption from the realm. Celeste rebuilds her world with Marcus as her eternal guardian and equal part. 1. The betrayal of trust. The crystal spires of Verdania had never looked more beautiful than they did in their final hour. Princess Celeste stood at the grand window of her tower chamber, watching the prismatic light dance across the floating gardens that had taken her ancestors millennia to cultivate. The sight should have filled her with peace, but instead, a cold dread settled in her stomach like a stone. Below in the courtyard, she could see the emergency council meeting she had been deliberately excluded from. Lord Cassius Blackthorn's silver hair caught the light as he gestured emphatically to the other advisors. High Priestess Morvena nodded gravely, her ceremonial robes billowing in the ethereal breeze. Even her childhood friend, Captain Aldrich, of the Royal Guard, stood among them, with his head bowed in what looked suspiciously like shame. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. "Enter," she called, not turning from the window. "Your Highness?" The voice was unfamiliar human. She spun around to find a tall man in the distinctive blue and silver uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. His brown hair was cropped military short, and his green eyes held an intensity that immediately commanded respect. Captain Marcus Stone, Earth Alliance. "I was told you were expecting me," Celeste frowned. "I'm afraid there's been some mistake, Captain. I know nothing of any Earth delegation." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's concerning. My orders were explicit: provide military support to Princess Celeste of Verdania in preparation for the Voidwalker invasion. Your council specifically requested human assistance." "My council?" The dread in her stomach grew heavier. "Captain Stone, I think we both need to understand what's truly happening here." Before Marcus could respond, the palace bells began to toll not the melodic chimes of ceremony, but the harsh, discordant clanging of invasion. Through the crystal walls, Celeste could see dark shapes materializing at the city's borders. There, forms writhing like living shadows against Verdania's luminous architecture. "The Voidwalkers," she whispered, her face draining of color. "They're here. But the defenses should be—" Her words died as she witnessed the unthinkable. The great barrier that protected Verdania flickered once, twice, then vanished entirely. In the courtyard below, Lord Cassius raised his hand in what could only be a signal. The massive gates of the palace began to swing open. By the stars, Celeste breathed. "They're letting them in." Marcus was already moving, his hand on the weapon at his side. "Your Highness, we need to leave. Now." But Celeste remained frozen. At the window, watching her world crumble as the Voidwalkers poured through the open gates. Her people, the advisors she had trusted with her life, the guards who had sworn to protect her, stood aside as the shadows consumed everything in their path. "Why?" she whispered. The chamber door burst open. Captain Aldrich rushed in, his face a mask of anguish. "Celeste, you have to run. The council, they've made a deal with the Voidwalkers. Your life is forfeit in exchange for sparing the outer provinces." Marcus stepped protectively in front of the princess. "And you? Are you part of this betrayal too?" Aldrich's hand went to his sword, but not to draw it. Instead, he unfastened the blade and let it clatter to the floor. I should be. I stood there and said nothing while they planned your murder, Celeste. I'm a coward, but I won't be your executioner.
Abia.
Sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor. Celeste finally moved, her royal training overriding her shock. She grabbed a small crystal pendant from her jewelry box, the heart of Verdania. Her kingdom's most sacred relicant faced the two men. Captain Stone, your mission may have been arranged through treachery, but will you honor it still? Marcus met her gaze steadily. I gave my word to protect you, Your Highness. That doesn't change because your own people decided to break theirs. Together, they ran. Part 2. Unlikely Alliance. The hidden passages beneath Verdania's palace were older than memory, carved from living crystal that pulsed with its own inner light. Princess Celeste led the way through the narrow tunnels.
Ow!
Her intimate knowledge of the palace's secrets their only advantage against the chaos erupting above. Behind her, Captain Marcus Stone moved with the silent precision of a trained soldier, his weapon ready despite their desperate flight. They had been running for what felt like hours when they finally stopped in a vast, underground chamber. Ancient murals covered the walls, depicting the first alliance between Verdania and the Star Peoples who had come before humanity. Celeste sank against one of the carved pillars, her elegant gown torn and stained with the crystal dust of their passage. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lord Cassius raised me after my parents died. High Priestess Morvana taught me the sacred mysteries. Captain Aldrich and I had played together as children. How could they? Her voice broke. Marcus kept watch at the chamber's entrance, but his attention was divided between their security and the princess's pain. Your Highness, in my experience, people betray those closest to them for 3 reasons: fear, greed, or the belief that they're saving something more important. What could be more important than loyalty? Than honor? Survival? Marcus answered grimly. Their own, or what they think is the greater good? Celeste's hands clenched into fists. The greater good? They handed our world to the Voidwalkers. How is that? Her words were cut off by a slow, mocking applause that echoed through the chamber. From the shadows stepped a figure in elaborate dark armor, his face hidden behind a helmet that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The temperature in the chamber dropped noticeably. How touching, the figure said, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. The last princess of Verdania, abandoned by her own people. I am General Theron Voss, and I must say your council's terms were quite reasonable. Marcus raised his weapon, placing himself between Celeste and the general. The terms being her death, I assume? Oh, Captain Stone, yes, I know who you are. The terms were much more ... comprehensive. Voss removed his helmet, revealing a face that might once have been human, but was now marked with the same void-touched corruption that defined his soldiers. Princess Celeste's death was merely the appetizer. The main course is the complete absorption of Verdania into our realm, followed by the coordinates to Earth that your diplomatic mission so helpfully provided. Celeste rose, her grief transforming into cold fury. You're lying. Earth would never, wouldn't they? Voss smiled, showing teeth like black diamonds. Your precious Captain Stone carries clearance codes that will allow our forces to bypass Earth's defenses entirely. Did you really think your council's betrayal was an isolated incident? Marcus's face went pale as understanding dawned. The diplomatic mission. We were never meant to succeed. We were meant to be captured. Precisely. Though I must admit, your escape has provided an unexpected complication. Voss gestured, and more Voidwalker soldiers materialized from the shadows. No matter. The heart of Verdania will serve our purposes just as well as your corpse, Princess. Perhaps better. Celeste clutched the crystal pendant at her throat. Then you'll have to take it. The chamber erupted into battle. Marcus's military training served him well as he engaged the Voidwalkers, his plasma rifle cutting through their shadowy forms. But for every enemy he felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Celeste discovered that her sheltered royal upbringing had not prepared her for combat, but desperation made her creative. She used her knowledge of the crystal formations to trigger small avalanches, crushing several attackers beneath falling stone. General Voss watched the battle with detact. The sunken gardens had once been Verdania's greatest marvel, a living testament to the harmony between nature and crystal technology. Now, after the great cataclysm 3 centuries past, they lay buried beneath the modern city, accessible only through forgotten maintenance tunnels and the determination of those willing to risk the unstable ruins. Princess Celeste led Captain Marcus through the twisted maze of broken walkways and collapsed archways, her knowledge of the old history serving as their guide. The air here was different, thicker, charged with an ancient energy that made the hair on their arms stand on end. Bioluminescent fungi had colonized the crystal formations over the centuries, creating an eerie underwater glow that cast dancing shadows on every surface. "Your Highness," Marcus said, stepping carefully over a fallen pillar, "I have to ask exactly. How does one consult with someone who's been dead for 300 years? Oracle Seraphina isn't dead. Exactly, Celeste replied, ducking under a low-hanging crystal formation. She transcended physical form during the Great Cataclysm, binding her consciousness to the heart of Verdania itself. She's the keeper of all our deepest secrets, the guardian of knowledge too dangerous for normal minds to hold. And you know how to reach her. Every member of the royal family learns the ritual, though none have used it in generations. She paused at the entrance to what had once been a grand amphitheater, now half flooded and overgrown with strange plants. My parents thought it was too dangerous. They preferred to let old mysteries remain buried. The center of the amphitheater stood a single, intact structure, a crystalline dais that seemed to generate its own light. As they approached, Celeste could feel the heart of Verdania, pendant growing warm against her skin, resonating with the ancient energies that permeated this place. The process requires a blood offering, Celeste explained, producing a ceremonial dagger from her robes. Royal blood to awaken the oracle, and the heart of Verdania to provide the connection. Marcus caught her wrist gently. "Are you sure about this? If your parents thought it was dangerous. My parents are dead. My council has betrayed me. And my world is being consumed by shadow," Celeste replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I think we're well past the point of playing it safe." She pricked her palm with the dagger, letting several drops of blood fall onto the crystal dais. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire amphitheater filled with brilliant light. As the ancient stones awakened to the presence of royal blood, the air itself seemed to sing with harmonics that touched something deep in their souls. Then she appeared not physically, but as a presence that filled their minds and hearts simultaneously. Oracle Seraphina materialized as a figure of pure light, her features both ethereal and unmistakably real. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Child of Verdania," the oracle said, her attention focusing on Celeste with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. "You have awakened me in the darkest hour. The threads of fate converge around you like a spider's web, and I see great sorrow in your path. Oracle Seraphina, I seek knowledge of the Voidwalkers and their true purpose. My world is under attack, and I've learned that the invasion may be part of a larger plan involving Earth as well." The oracle's luminous form flickered, and for a moment her expression showed something approaching alarm. "The Voidwalkers seek the nexus, the point where all realities converge. They believe they can use the heart of Verdania to tear open the barriers between worlds permanently, making themselves masters of infinite realms." Marcus stepped forward. "What can we do to stop them?" Seraphina turned her attention to him, and he felt her consciousness brush against his mind like cool water. "Human child, you carry within you the genetic markers of the first contact. Your species was chosen long ago as partners to the peoples of Verdania, though neither side has understood the true reason until now." "What do you mean?" Celeste asked. "The heart of Verdania is not merely a relic of power, it is a key, one half of a paired artifact. The other half lies dormant in the human genetic structure, activated only by the specific combination of human determination and Verdanian nobility." The oracle's form began to flicker more rapidly. "Together, you could forge a bond strong enough to seal the nexus permanently. But the cost." "What cost?" Marcus demanded. "The bonding is irreversible. Your life forces would become permanently intertwined, your fates inseparable. To save both your worlds, you would sacrifice your individual existences to become something new, something unprecedented in the history of either species. Celeste and Marcus looked at each other, the weight of the oracle's words settling between them. Before either could respond, the amphitheater began to shake violently. Cracks appeared in the ancient stones as the sound of approaching voidwalkers echoed through the tunnels. "They have found you," Serafina warned, her voice growing faint. "General Voss seeks to claim the heart before you can learn to use it properly. You must flee, but remember the choice to bond must be made willingly by both parties in a moment of absolute trust. Only then can the true power be awakened." The oracle's form began to fade as the voidwalkers poured into the amphitheater, their dark energy disrupting the ancient harmonics. "Go, children of two worlds. The future of both depends upon the choices you make in the hours to come." With a final pulse of light, Oracle Serafina vanished, leaving Celeste and Marcus alone against the oncoming darkness. The crystal dais cracked down the middle as the voidwalker's corruption spread through the chamber. The ceiling began to collapse around them. "This way," Celeste shouted, grabbing Marcus's hand as they ran toward a partially hidden exit. Behind them, the sunken gardens folded in on themselves. 300 years of preserved history crumbling into dust and memory as they emerged into the upper tunnels, both of them breathing hard from their escape, and the weight of the oracle's revelation hung heavy between them. They now knew what they had to do to save their worlds, but the price seemed almost too high to contemplate. "What?" "A permanent bond," Marcus said quietly. "Our lives intertwined forever," Celeste replied. They looked at each other in the dim tunnel light. Both thinking the same thing, they barely knew each other, thrust together by circumstance and betrayal. Could they really make such a commitment? More importantly, did they have any choice? Above them, the sounds of the Voidwalker occupation grew louder. Time was running out. The royal treasury lay in ruins. What had once housed the accumulated wealth of 1,000 years now resembled a battlefield, precious artifacts scattered across the floor like broken toys. Princess Celeste picked her way through the debris, searching for any surviving relics that might aid them in their desperate mission. Behind her, Captain Marcus stood guard, his weapon trained on the shattered entrance. "There," Celeste said, kneeling beside an ornate chest that had somehow survived the destruction. Inside, wrapped in silk that still held traces of its original golden sheen, lay the scepter of binding, a ceremonial rod used in the most sacred of Verdanian rituals. "If the oracle was right about the bonding process, we'll need this." Marcus glanced over his shoulder. "Celeste, we need to talk about what happened back there," Spawn the oracle mentioned. "I know what you're going to say," she interrupted, standing and clutching the scepter tightly. "That we barely know each other, that such a commitment is madness. Actually, I was going to say that if it's our only chance to stop the Voidwalkers, then we have to consider it seriously." He turned to face her fully. "But you're right, it is madness. We've known each other for less than a day." Before Celeste could respond, a slow clapping echoed through the chamber. Both of them spun toward the sound to see Lord Cassius Blackthorne emerging from behind a toppled statue, his once immaculate robes now bearing the dark sigils of the Voidwalkers. "How touching," the elderly advisor said, his voice carrying a coldness that Celeste had never heard before. The lost princess and her gallant human protector, contemplating a mystical union. "If only you understood how pointless your efforts truly are." Cassius Celeste breathed, her heart breaking all over again. "Why, I trusted you. I loved you like a father. And I loved you like a daughter," he replied, his expression softening for just a moment, "which is why I tried to make your death quick and painless. But you forced my hand, child. The Voidwalkers grow impatient." Marcus raised his weapon. "Stay back, old man. I don't want to hurt you, but I will if necessary." Cassius laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Hurt me? Captain Stone, you still don't understand what you're dealing with." He raised his hand and shadows began to coalesce around his fingers. "I didn't simply make a deal with the Voidwalkers. I became one of them willingly, decades ago." The transformation was horrifying to witness. Cassius's human appearance melted away like a discarded mask, revealing the writhing darkness beneath. His eyes became voids of absolute blackness, and when he smiled, rows of crystalline teeth gleamed in the dim light. The invasion of Verdania was planned long before you were born. Celeste, he continued, his voice now carrying the same otherworldly resonance as General Voss. I guided your education, shaped your beliefs, all to ensure you would be unprepared for this moment. The heart of Verdania was always meant to be ours. Celeste felt the pendant at her throat growing warm, responding to the presence of the Voidwalker corruption. You won't have it. Oh, but I will, Cassius gestured. And more shadows poured into the chamber, not Voidwalker soldiers this time, but corrupted members of Verdania's own royal guard. Your childhood friends, dear. Captain Aldrich leads them, though he's not quite himself anymore. Indeed, Aldrich stepped forward, his face bearing the same void-touched marks as Cassius. When he spoke, his voice was hollow, devoid of the warmth Celeste remembered. Forgive me, Your Highness. The corruption offers such clarity. The battle erupted with vicious intensity. Marcus found himself outnumbered, but not outmatched his military training and superior weapons, giving him an edge against the corrupted guards. Celeste discovered that the scepter of binding could channel her royal heritage into blasts of pure energy, each strike pushing back the encroaching shadows. But they were losing ground. For every corrupted guard they defeated, 2 more appeared. Cassius watched from the sidelines, his transformation allowing him to feed power to his minions while remaining safely out of range. Marcus, Celeste called. Out as a shadow blade grazed his shoulder, drawing blood. We're not going to win this fight conventionally.
The bonding?
He replied, dropping one attacker with a perfectly placed shot. Here. Now it's the only way.
Right.
But as Celeste moved toward Marcus, Aldrich intercepted her. His corrupted strength far greater than his human form had ever possessed. They struggled for control of the scepter of binding, and in the melee, the ceremonial rod was knocked from her grasp, clattering across the floor toward Cassius. She screamed, diving after it. She was too late. Cassius's shadowy tendrils wrapped around the scepter, and she could feel its power being drained away, corrupted by his void-touched essence. Without the ceremonial focus, the bonding ritual would be impossible. But Marcus had seen enough. In that moment, watching Celeste desperately reaching for their only hope while surrounded by enemies, something clicked into place in his mind. The Oracle had said the bond required absolute trust, a willingness to sacrifice everything for another person. He had found that willingness. Ignoring the chaos around them, Marcus dropped his weapon and pulled Celeste to her feet. The crystal core of Verdania pulsed with dying light, its once brilliant radiance now dimmed by the creeping shadow of void corruption. At its heart stood Commander Nyx Shadowbane, the true architect of the invasion, her form a perfect fusion of ethereal beauty and terrifying darkness. She had been waiting for them. Princess Celeste realized this entire catastrophe had been orchestrated to bring them to this moment. Welcome, bonded ones, Nyx said, her voice like silk over steel. I must admit, your transformation exceeded even my calculations. General Voss and Lord Cassius were merely puppets, useful for driving you toward this inevitable confrontation. Marcus and Celeste stood hand in hand at the chamber's entrance, their merged consciousness allowing them to communicate without words. The bond had changed them both. Marcus could feel the flow of Verdanian energy through his human cells, while Celeste possessed an understanding of tactical thinking that had never been part of her royal education. You orchestrated everything, Celeste said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of their situation. The betrayal of my counsel, Marcus's mission, even the Oracle's guidance, all of it, led here, of course. Nyx moved with fluid grace around the massive crystal formation that powered Verdania's very existence. The nexus between worlds can only be opened by a bonded pair, one human, one Verdanian, their life forces permanently intertwined. You have become the key to infinite conquest, and now you will open the door willingly. Never, Marcus growled, raising his weapon.
Oh.
But you will. Nyx smiled, and suddenly the crystal walls around them became transparent, revealing scenes of horror beyond imagination. Earth burned under Voidwalker assault, its cities consumed by the same shadows that had devoured Verdania. You're precious. Human colonies cry out for salvation. Your adoptive world writhes in agony. Open the nexus, and I will spare both realms. Refuse and watch them die slowly while you remain powerless to help. The images were devastating in their clarity. Saw his former comrades fighting desperately against overwhelming odds, their plasma weapons barely slowing the void corruption. Celeste watched her people, those who had survived the initial assault, being systematically hunted through the crystal forests she had once called home. Choose quickly, Nyx continued.
Oh.
My patience wears thin, and my forces grow hungry. But something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, Marcus and Celeste felt a strange sense of peace settling over them. The bond had given them more than shared power. It had granted them perfect understanding of each other's hearts. You made one mistake, Celeste said quietly. And what would that be? You assumed we wanted to save our worlds the way they were, Marcus replied. But some things need to burn before they can be reborn. Together, they placed their joined hands on the crystal core. But instead of opening the nexus as Nyx expected, they began to channel their combined energy in the opposite direction, not outward, toward other realms, but inward, into the very foundations of reality itself. What are you doing? Nyx shrieked, her composure finally cracking. Purification, Celeste answered simply. The crystal core blazed with light that was neither purely Verdanian nor human, but something entirely new. The energy spread outward in waves, washing over every surface it touched. Where it encountered void corruption, the darkness didn't just retreat, it was transformed. It was converted into something clean and whole. Commander Nyx threw herself at them, her shadow form lashing out with tendrils of pure malevolence. But the light emanating from Marcus and Celeste's bond was too strong. Each attack she launched was absorbed and transformed, adding to the growing tide of purification that flowed through both worlds simultaneously. You don't understand, Nyx gasped, her form beginning to dissolve. Without the darkness, there can be no light. Without conflict, there can be no growth. You're destroying the very thing that drives evolution forward. Maybe, Marcus admitted, feeling the transformation taking hold in his own cells. But sometimes evolution means choosing cooperation over conquest. The final wave of energy exploded outward from the crystal core, reaching every corner of both Verdania and Earth simultaneously. The void corruption didn't just vanish, it was converted into new life, new possibilities. On Earth, the shadow-consumed cities began to bloom with impossible gardens. On Verdania, the crystal formations sang with harmonies that had been lost for millennia. When the light finally faded, Marcus and Celeste found themselves changed once again. They were still bonded, their life forces still intertwined. But now they existed as something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds. Living proof that cooperation was possible between species. Commander Nyx lay on the crystal floor, her shadow form gone, replaced by something that might once have been beautiful. With her last breath, she whispered, Perhaps you were right. In the days that followed, both worlds struggled to understand what had happened. The void corruption was gone, but so was much of what people had considered normal. On Earth, humans found themselves capable of understanding alien thoughts and concepts. On Verdania, the survivors discovered new empathy for the struggles of biological beings. Princess Celeste returned to her rebuilt throne, but not as the ruler she had been trained to be. Instead, she became something new, a guardian of the bond between worlds. Working alongside Marcus to establish a truly cooperative alliance between their peoples. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the restored crystal gardens, giving up who you were to become. This Celeste smiled, her hand finding his with the natural ease of their bond. I didn't give up who I was, she replied. I became who I was always meant to be. My people let me down, but you taught me what loyalty really means, not blind obedience to tradition, but the courage to choose something better. Above them, the twin moons of Verdania shone with new light, while in the distance, the first human colony ships were arriving, their passengers eager to begin building a shared future among the crystal spires. The last stand of Verdania had ended not in defeat, but in transformation, a testament to the power of trust, sacrifice, and the courage to believe that even in the darkest hour, redemption was possible. Together, they watched the stars, knowing that their bond would endure as long as either world needed guardians to protect the light they had fought so hard to preserve.